So let me get this straight. Of all of the hackathons you participated in, it was one with the Yale School of Management, and they made you go through an application process.
Yeah, yeah. So
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Educative Sessions. My name is Lee Ngo, and I am the community manager with Educative. Educative makes it easy for authors to provide interactive and adaptive courses for software developers. Educative Sessions itself is a multi-episodic campaign to engage with developers about their stories and the ways in which they came into becoming a developer. Today's guest is Nicholas Walsh. Nicholas works for AWS as a developer advocate, I believe. Welcome so much to the show. And today we are going to talk about Nicholas's aversion to hackathons and how that very much shaped his experience as a developer. Nicholas, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Lee, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure. And as unique as I think my story is, I think that it is, there are probably more similarities than most people think at first glance. So I'm excited to share some of the nitty gritty details around the first hackathon, everything that led up to it, and everything since then.
Fantastic. Very excited. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Nicholas, so going back to this peculiar thing you wanted to talk about, to be honest, is that you actually tried to actively avoid hackathons. Like, that's an uncommon thing, I have to say, as someone, especially, I've worked in many hackathons, I've organized them and participated in them. What was your initial aversion to them?
Yeah, so it starts even earlier than hackathons, and I promise I won't give too much of this like drawn out origin story. But I was not a computer science major when I went to school. In fact, I was one of those students that was like, "Hey, you're good at science. You could go be a doctor or something to that effect." And I liked math and numbers. Did some biomedical engineering work for my studies, and through my research, I ended up taking on a bit of the programming responsibilities. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but I always kept thinking like, this like programming thing, it's always a means to the end. Like I'm just doing this to then do the analysis of the data, but the act of like writing the scripts and all of that wasn't something I would spend a significant amount of time doing or enjoy or be good at, God forbid. Right. So I had a lot of friends that were in computer science and they kept talking about hackathons. I saw them going on the weekends, saw lots of pictures on social media, and I said, that's not for me, right? I'm a imitation coder. I don't write real code. I write in languages that, don't build, the apps that we all know and use, right?
Could you unpack that concept, the imitation coder, please?
Yeah, I mean, there's like this zeitgeist around like what makes someone a real dev, right? The whole 10x developer, and there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek jokes that folks do talk about with respect to that. But I think there's something that's more fundamental around this concept of like gatekeeping, and I don't think anyone explicitly gatekept me, but it was like I was gatekeeping myself in a way, right? Like I'm using these unconventional tools that a lot of other and programming languages like MATLAB and R and things that I didn't see other people that built Facebook used, right? So I figured, I don't see people using those at hackathons, and hackathons are all about algorithms and being the best programmer out there. And I was like, I didn't think that was me. I didn't think I'd have a good time. I didn't think that there was a place for me to, both enjoy myself, but also to like contribute, right? It was always about building things. And so I always felt like, nope, hackathons, not for me. Mr. Biomedical Engineering, I write some scripts here and there, and I'll avoid them.
Sure. I mean, it's a understandable perspective coming from where you are, but what was the turning point? Like, what was there? Was it somebody or something that convinced you maybe I should try one?
Yeah, it was a two-pronged assault, I'd say, against my fortitude of saying no to hackathons. The first side of it was I had just continuously seen friends going over and over and over again. And so I was constantly exposed. And I kept thinking in the back of my head, like, maybe I should, like, I learned a little bit here and there in passing from them. And I said, maybe someday. And the second part of it was there was a hackathon that was themed around solving medical problems, and that was sort of I think that was the keystone there for me, because I felt like, like even if I wasn't gonna contribute to what I thought programming at a hackathon looked like, I at the very least would be able to contribute good ideas and be a contributing member at the bare minimum. And so it took the two of those things, like the reaching a boiling point for me to go like, all right, that's it. I'm going to register for this hackathon. It was the biomedical hackathon at Yale's School of Management. It was very interesting. You had to apply to it. I think this is the longest hackathon application I had ever filled out in my life. And halfway through filling it out, I was almost too intimidated to even complete it. And they were like, oh, here, paste sample code that you've written, all of these things. And by some miracle, I was accepted. We could talk more about like the whole experience there, but largely, even through filling out the registration form, I was still sort of on the fence and doubting whether I should even show up.
So let me get this straight. Of all of the hackathons you participated in, it was one with the Yale School of Management, and they made you go through an application process?
Yeah. So in a weird way, it was, it was pinned as this collaboration between, trying to bridge the gap between software developers that were super adept at being able to, build these computational systems, and doctors and folks that had a medical research background that had deep subject matter expertise in the problems that need to be solved. And so in a way, I felt like I was kind of neither of those as, undergraduate biomedical engineering researcher. And so I was like, you know what, maybe I'm comfortably in the middle here. And I applied. And I feel like there were very few people with that sort of perspective, like someone that sat at the intersection, but wasn't necessarily the expert in either. And on, I'll get into more of the event itself, but basically, yes, very unconventional, but that was finally the prompt that said like, hey, maybe this could be for me. And it spoke to me in a way that, none of the other hackathons at the time really seemed to. Again, this was quite a few years ago at this point. I know the hackathon scene, especially for students, has since expanded and ballooned wonderfully, where even medical hackathons are, more prominent. But that was the first foot in the door for me.
Wow. So I have to ask, like, how did it go? Like, you go to this hackathon at Yale in the School of Management that was medically themed, where I assume you had to do a DNA and a blood sample and all this kind of process as well. I'm just joking, or am I? Not really sure. I want to make an inquiry to the Yale SOM to see what they're doing there. But how was your experience overall with your very first hackathon?
Yeah, so I'd say the experience started even before I ever arrived. And the honest truth is that I was 99% sure that I didn't want to go the night before it happened. And I was like, in my head, I said, I'd have to wake up and drive there myself, and it would be very far. And I went to sleep fully expecting to sleep in the next morning and not take the weekend trip out to New Haven. And I don't know what it was. I went to sleep. I woke up very early. I figured, hey, I couldn't make it if I drove at that time, but I hopped on. I drove my car to the ferry in Long Island. I went to school at Stony Brook. Took the ferry on my car across, made it to New Haven, got there. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't have my morning coffee. I was super intimidated. I mean, the school itself looked quite different from the school that I was used to at Stony Brook. But more than anything, I think I was one of the younger people that was there. So that intimidated me a bit too. But, it was during the opening ceremony, they talked a little bit about, hey, here's what we're here to do. We've got some really cool data sets here. We've got some sample problems. It was not a massive group of people, maybe around like 50 to 100. And they sort of started with this open prompt around like, hey, if you have ideas for how to solve some of these problems, just pitch them in front of the room. And I got up there, I pitched sort of what I wanted to work on, and a few other people seemed to like that. And we went off, and it was 24, 36 hours. I can't remember, but it was certainly a blur. It was a roller coaster of emotions, as I think anyone working with code has ever experienced, but especially for me the first time around, because I was in a way playing translator between the computer science PhD on one side that had extensive statistical modeling experience, and the MD student on the other side. And I had, contributions here and there, but like, that was the first time I've seen someone acting as a conduit between two groups, really providing value, which, I can say this now confidently later. At the time, I was just thinking like, oh, how can I do anything, right? But 24, 36 hours later, we ended up having a really successful project. We ended up, I don't remember if there was like a first overall, but we won one of the categories. And I was exhausted. But the one thing that was super apparent to me amongst all of the emotions and lack of sleep was, this was so much fun. I need to do more of this. And very uncomfortable sort of like throwing myself into it. Even the morning of, I was in the car like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. And it was probably one of the best decisions of my life to go and to put myself out there like that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Looks like you had a fantastic experience. Looks like it was the start of many more hackathons thereafter. What would you say you learned in particular from these experiences? And now you are, a senior developer advocate, I should say. I think I forgot the senior title. I apologize. That implies at the very least both a long tenure in exposing yourself to the developer world, while at the same time, like you kind of experienced in this first mode, like worked in between people who are on the technical and from the user or potential user side. So what did you learn in particular?
Yeah, I think especially given sort of that I was still in school at the time, I think that a lot of colleges and universities are trying to find ways to instill the idea of teamwork and camaraderie through group work, but oftentimes it kind of falls short when you have a bunch of people with the exact same sets of skills all working together on a problem that has like a known solution, right? And this hackathon was kind of the first example of something that I had been exposed to that truly involved completely multidisciplinary collaboration and it essentially being open-ended. There was no guarantee that you would have a solution or a project that would provide value. And especially so for myself, being the resident non-expert of any of the polar ends, I had heard about this idea for a very long time within tech of being able to sort of serve as this conduit between multiple parts of an organization. But even within a 3-person team, it was very clear that without some of the things that I had done, medical expertise and computer science expertise would not have been able to come together to build the same thing. And so it was a very eye-opening experience, even if it was just like a N of one sort of anecdote. But it was really powerful for me. And it also sort of, again, it was still in the languages I was familiar with, but like, it was the first time I had sort of seen solutions built on those technologies that I was used to being sort of propped up as very valuable. And that was fairly new to me too, this Hacker News and all sorts of sites that talk up and down about particular programming languages. And that was the first time where I was amongst a large group of people that were all sort of used to and very happy to the tools that I was used to. And, I knew that, that extended more than just the people that were in that room. I'm sure there were other developers out there in the country that use those same tools. So I figured, oh, wow, like I'm not just working with this niche little thing in the corner. It can be much more than that. And I think that there are so many parallels that have extended to that beyond just working internally on a project that, through work, especially at AWS, but just in the career of developer relations, you essentially have to live at this intersection of companies that build tools for developers and the developers that are going to use them. And so living sort of on that intersection is something that has always interested me. I've always loved teaching, but I've always been sort of in this camp of I love doing a bunch of different things at one time, and developer relations is certainly an avenue for me to be able to do that at scale.
Wow. We need more time, but I actually think we are right up against the wire, and I want to give you an opportunity to actually talk a little bit more about your own work or anything you'd like to talk about. And this is a little thing that we do with all of our guests to allow them, whether it's a shameless plug or just a little pat on the back, or you can talk about someone else's work as well. So Nicholas, the time is yours. What would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have no books, no movies that I'm starring in on the on the forefront. Unfortunately, yeah, yeah. I wish. I think in pairing with sort of all the things that I spoke about, something that means a lot to me is not only the hackathon community and the organizations that help to power a lot of that, namely like Major League Hacking, the first one that I went to and attended at Yale. That time was not a Major League Hacking event, but I think they're doing some really great work to empower students and developers to have experiences just like what I had. But further, like that hackathon was only day one of my journey into taking programming far more seriously as something I would do forever. And a large part of my ability to learn and make the most of those weekends was due to people with the job title that I so graciously get to hold now, which is developer advocate, developer evangelist. I didn't end up switching my major at college. I cut my teeth going and like facing bug after bug. And the people that helped me were all people that had the title developer evangelist, developer advocate at these hackathons. And so, you want to be your hero that you wish you had at a certain time. Like I think that's like a sort of mission statement I hold for myself. Like try to be the person that can offer other people the same experience that I had by educating and being that person. So shout out to all the developer advocates and evangelists out there that help to inspire me. There's a list of names that's too long to rattle off now, but I think they know who they are. And I strive to be the best version of that for everyone else in sort of the next generation.
Wow, what a wonderful sentiment to express as we conclude. Nicholas Walsh, this has been a fantastic session. Thank you so much for taking, especially you're in New York right now, so taking the evening to join us for our session. And really appreciate you sharing a story that I think a lot of people can relate to at the same time. Really wonderful to see how much it shaped your amazing career. And thank you to everyone else for watching this show as well. Keep an eye out on our social media for our next talk. Our next talk is sometime tomorrow, also in the afternoon. So check out our social media for those announcements. And also, if you want to learn more about what we do at Educative, check us out at educative.io. So for all of us here at Educative, thank you so much and happy learning. Thank you. Thanks so much for watching our session. Be sure to watch more sessions below and subscribe to our channel to get the latest stories. Also follow us on social media and check us out at educative.io. Happy learning.